Good evening. Good evening. Welcome again to another Stewardship in Motion. I'm Lionel. Thanks for joining me tonight. I see we've got quite a few people joining us online. Just a plug, remember, we do this every single Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We come to you live on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, um, and within our community as well. So, welcome to the community members, and for others, welcome to this session. So, tonight we're going to tackle a topic that often gets, I think, misconstrued or commingled with another topic. But we're going to talk about a very interesting piece of text and then try to roll that into our present day life. It's week 30. So if you're like me and you count your weeks, it's really important. You only have 52 of them a year. So we're week 30. We're well past the halfway point, but we're still coming to you live. Hopefully, you are building up some skills from following us. Uh, yeah, so let's do it. So this week, we want to take a look at scripture found in Luke chapter 19. We're looking from verses 11 through 27. It's kind of a long passage, a familiar passage to many. It's the parable of the minas, which is often commingled or misconstrued or superimposed as the parable of the talents, which is very different if you actually study the two. The reference is similar, but yet there's some distinct differences I want to sort of talk about tonight and then apply that to our stewardship life and see if we can glean a framework that we can use, not only to manage our money, but to manage everything that God has entrusted to us. So, as we think about this parable, last week we were talking a lot about the faithfulness aspect. So, this week we're going to kind of transition a little bit into the multiplication section of it all. So, it's probably a familiar story to some. Let me read it. It's kind of lengthy, so let me jump right into it right now. I have it up here on one of my devices. So it starts out at verse 11. While they were listening to this, he went on to tell them a parable because he was near Jerusalem and the people thought that the kingdom of God was going to appear at once. He said, a man of noble birth went to a distant country to have himself appointed king and then to return. So he called 10 of his servants and gave them 10 minas. Put this money to work, he said, until I come back. But his subjects hated him and sent a delegation after him to say, we don't want this man to be our king. He was made king, however, and returned home. Then he sent for the servants to whom he had given the money in order to find out what they had gained with it. The first one came and said, sir, your mina has earned 10 more. Verse 17, this is the one we love. Well done, my good servant, his master replied, because you have been trustworthy in a very small matter. Take charge of 10 cities. The second came and said, sir, your mina has earned 5 more. His master answered, you take charge of 5 cities. Then another servant came in and said, sir, here's your mina. I kept it laid away in a piece of cloth. I was afraid of you because you are a hard man. You take out what you did not put in, and you reap what you did not sow. His master replied, I will judge you by your own words, you wicked servant. You knew, did you, that I am a hard man, taking out what I did not put in and reaping what I did not sow? Why then didn't you put my money on deposit so that when I came back, I could have collected it with interest? Then he said to those standing by, take this mina away from him and give it to the one who has 10 minas. And they replied, sir, they said, he already has 10. He replied, I tell you that everyone who has more will be given. But as far as the one who has nothing, even that they will let me read that again. But as for the one who has nothing, even what they have will be taken away. But those enemies of mine who did not want me to be king over them, bring them here and kill them in front of me. Now, that last piece is pretty tragic, um, but it's still the word of God. So I look for direction and meaning in it all. But it's a very interesting sequence. And I talked about how sometimes this gets conflated with the parable of the talents, which is very different. Because notice in this one, they all got the same amount in monetary value. And based on their stewardship of that equal amount, they not only inherited more, you could say, wealth because they were charged over cities, and that's why I kind of um, focused on what their reward was. When you think about a city, it's much more than just the monetary, it's the responsibility involved in operating, running, and managing a city. So we're going to make this parallel in our own lives. It is important to understand that I've heard this said before. I was in a wisdom challenge to start off the year, and the facilitator talked about this same topic. And he said, notice that money is sort of the test for us, that these individuals, the servants, were tested in money, and based on the way they handled the money, then they were given additional responsibility. And the point that he brought out was also they were entrusted with relationships. So, in order to run a city or several cities, you got to be able to manage relationships because you can't be in five cities at once to, look at the one server who got five cities and one who got 10 cities. You have to be a good manager and implement people who have authority under you to manage areas that are within your purview, but you just aren't there to manage in this type of environment. So I think that is very interesting for us to notice that the reward wasn't more money exactly that directly, even though if you're running a city, you're probably going to be more wealthy, but it was authorability and it was responsibility at the scale that they were able to manage. And I think that's important as we look at our own financial lives. I think our resources are directly tied to our level of management. I've seen it in my own life. When I paid more attention, when I managed things well, the outcome was more abundance, more opportunities. So I think the key in all of this is management. And that's one of the core principles that we teach about stewardship. Stewardship is really you're a manager. You're taking away the owner role responsibility. In this example, that king, he's the owner, and the subjects referred to as servants, they are the stewards in the whole situation. Why? It doesn't belong to them, it was given to them to manage. And so we see three clear illustrations of what proper management looks like and the reward for good management and poor management. So let's dive into that a little bit. So again, here's the piece we all want to look at. Well done, good servant, because you've been trustworthy in a small matter. Now take charge of cities. That's what I wanted to highlight. That it was increasing responsibility, not just an increase in finances. And I think that's what happens in our real lives. In my life, as I increased my own personal management and then began investing. You all, if you follow me, real estate's my thing. When you take on another property, that's not just the income that property is producing, it's the management thereof. And in the area that I work, short-term and mid-term rentals, is a lot of management with that because you got roommates, you have people coming and going, you have messaging, you have housekeeping, you have utilities, you have maintenance, you have stocking supplies. All of this requires management in order for it to work and actually produce the profit, produce the revenue. And I think that happens in our life too. The more we manage properly the work that God has entrusted us to do, whether it's W 2, business owner, entrepreneur, the more you steward that and manage it properly, typically the more resources you're entrusted with, the more opportunities, the more connections, the more relationships result as a benefit, as a byproduct of your great management over the core thing that you're responsible for. Um, so that's something I'm looking at in my own life as well too. Wherever I have areas that aren't developing or growing at the rate or at the expectation that I have for it, I have to go back and ask myself, how am I managing it? How am I stewarding it? And thus the result that I have, the level of accomplishment, success, responsibility is all directly tied to my management skill. So when we look in reality, a lot of us get stuck because we want more income, we want a better job, we want more time off, we want more freedom, but can we be trusted with the responsibility that it requires to get to that next level, to have the higher income, to have more assets, to have more wealth? There's a certain level of management, a certain level of engagement that we have to have in order to execute that properly. And I talk about this a lot. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about windfalls and athletes when they get their money, because many of them aren't taught how to manage their money. They are taught a very acute skill that they execute on the field, on the stage, on the microphone, but money management and business management is something completely different. And many of them fail in those ventures because they don't have the skill set in order to manage those areas. So, because they haven't learned how to manage their wealth, very quickly, the statistic is within 6 years, they lose it. And that's really just a management thing. And many times we try to outsource this to other people. And if those people don't have our best interests in mind, I'm thinking about a particular boxer who's really famous here in the States, who recently said he's been bamboozled out of over $100 million because he was signing promissory notes that were blank. And his money manager was doing some erroneous things with those promissory notes. And then he thus got defrauded because he wasn't managing himself, he wasn't stewarding himself. And then the people who he allocated to do that work, he wasn't stewarding them properly to make sure that they were doing their work efficiently, properly, and with his instruction and best interests at mind. So that happens to us a lot. We get a 401k, it gets assigned to us from our employer. It's with Fidelity, it's with Vanguard, it's with whoever, but we don't do our due diligence to find out what is the portfolio makeup. We don't know who the money manager is. If there's education courses on those platforms, which they are, we don't take those education courses, so we don't know how to interact, and we just think that that money's going to be there and will be multiplied and will be available when we're our most vulnerable and need it in our elderly years. And that's the mistake that many Americans make who make high salaries. Is not that they don't make money, they just don't manage their money well. Or they designate it to a person that they do not know or does not have their best interests in mind. And then these sorts of stories and situations arise from that mismanagement, misappropriation. So, um, you might be saying, so I'm someone who doesn't really have anything to steward right now. I don't have savings. I don't have extra income. I don't have anything that feels like a tangible mina in my life. But I would say you have time. You have skills that people aren't paying you for as yet. You have relationships you may not have invested in. You have influence that you may not be using. So I think we all have something. I think that's why it's important we don't get the actual monetary value of the mina in the story. Yeah, we know it's some sort of money, but we don't know what the value of it is. There's some speculation about it. But I think that's where the abstractness of it is, where we can apply that to our lives. We all have something, whether it be money, resources, like I said, relationships, skill sets, time that we are not allocating properly. All these things are available for us to build ourselves and influence not only the kingdom, the communities around us. So I think Many believers, we narrow the hardship down to money, but I think it's much more than just our resources. It's our time, our talents, our treasures, our relationships, our influence. All those things are important. So, how do I steward this? Right? Oh, I talked about this. Sorry, I'm so engaged in talking to all of you. I wasn't advancing my slides. So, in this slide, I'm talking about how it wasn't a. I mentioned this earlier. It wasn't a dollar for dollar exchange. Um, Actually, when they proved that they were good at managing money, they got more responsibility. So it wasn't equity there in the dollar to cost or dollar to value ratio. They got significantly more value responsibility by proving themselves to be good managers and multipliers. That's the key. I think I know my foundation is to teach people how to manage, but multiplication is what changed my life. All right. So and I talked about this too. Your current reality, right? You may feel like you don't have anything. You do have something. You are valuable. You were created by the Almighty, and He put something inside of you, whether it's your voice, your ability to nurture people and relationships, skill sets. Time is something He's given all of us to be able to use it to help others. So I think we all have something that we can start with. And then again, I talked about this. He never actually put a dollar figure on the mind, and I'm glad he didn't. And it keeps it abstract enough for us to have a broader application of just a dollar amount. All right. So I want to show you this principle that I've been thinking about, and I want to teach this to you tonight, share it with you really, and have a conversation around it. If you're in the chat, jump in there, tell us where you're watching from, what platform you're using. Well, that's obvious. It'll be in that platform, but just keep the conversation going as I try to facilitate this information, and tell me how it's resonating with you, and thoughts you may have, or commentary about it. So as I think about this minor principle and I look at those servants, um, first, what did they do? They recognized what they had. Two of the three, well, all three of them did recognize. Two of them recognized what they had, and they recognized the potential of what they had. One of them recognized what they had, and they allowed fear and scarcity mindset to only show them how they could potentially lose what they had. And I think that is powerful as a statement within our society. I think many of us have many resources, but we think about, man, I'm not going to try that because I heard such and such lost money doing it. Even though you may have a passion for it, even though you may have some knowledge around it, those are always the first two things I point out. Is it something you're interested in? Is it something you have knowledge around? And then begin the discussion around investment, right? So whether it's in ministry, whether it's in something in the financial realm, whether it's investing in a relationship, you got to have enthusiasm and some knowledge. And then once you recognize what that unique thing is that you have that's been entrusted to you, how can you put it to work? And that is all. I think that's the question really of our current society. That's why coaching is so big. That's why YouTube and social media is so big. And we're expanding our awareness to personalities and information sources, is because we're all searching for a way to put our talent to work. And now we have more modalities, more platforms in order to do that. Not that we always didn't. We always had music, we always had art, we always had a lot of things. But now, in a unique way, in this information age, your voice, I can come to you and talk to you about thoughts that I have right here through social media, through YouTube, and we can have a conversation. The couple dozen of us that are on this call can have a real time conversation about these things. I think that's really important. And then expecting growth. through faithfulness. So it's not a one-time activity. Tying it back to last week, the consistency factor is where the growth will happen, right? If you plant something once, water it one time, and you come back in 2 weeks, you'll find something dead and shriveled up. But if you plant it, you water it on a weekly basis, you make sure it gets sun, it will grow. Consistency is the key. As an avid gardener, I could tell you that's kind of, there is no secret sauce to that, right? It's really about consistently pruning, consistently watering, and making sure there's the proper nutrients and the proper environment for growth, right? So first, I talked about this recognizing um, what has God entrusted to you. So I'm going to push this back on all of you. Jump in the chat, and if you want to share, if something is resonating with you, if you want to share something that you believe God has charged you with and you haven't acted on it yet, talk about what that is, what you think it is. Even if you're actually, you might actually be using it right now. Talk about what you think. Don't compare yourself or contrast or make excuses for the timing involved in all of it. Just what do you think that is unique to you? And if you're saying, I don't know, I don't have that skill set, I never figured out what my gift was. Well, something that helped me was, what is the activity that you engage in that you lose track of time and hunger? That's a good reference. If you find yourself doing something, for me, it's educating people. I can begin to talk on a topic and for lose track of time, eating, all of those things, and not worry about it, and be at peak performance and energy level, and not feel fatigue. I did it for dozens of years as an educator in corporate America. 8 hours of talking then didn't scare me. So yeah, so it all depends on. I would say passion is one thing, but as you talk about skill and development, again, it has to be intrinsic. So I use those two barometers. What activity do you engage in that you lose track of time and that you lose track of your own well-being? First is hunger, because we all get hungry when we get bored for some odd reason, right? So that I would use those two as a starting place to figure out what is your thing. Um, or if we want to apply this just to our financial life, what is that income? What is that resource? What is that skill you haven't yet applied that could be supplementing your income? And how are you using it? Are you effectively managing it? And two, put it to work. Whether it's a side hustle, the main hustle, skill development, and making sure that you are approaching it with a world class intention. I was watching a podcast just yesterday. Forbes released the list of the, believe the number that they're using is the 200 most self-made people. I don't think it's in the world, it's in the US, because Oprah and another gentleman that I follow was on it, and the interview was about him. He is an African American um, hedge fund owner. And he talked about that, pursuing whatever it is he wanted to do, he wanted to be world class at it. And having that approach, I think, is not only biblical. I think it brings out the best version of ourselves, which ultimately creates the best version of community, of society. If we all are trying to pursue what we love, what we're passionate about, with a world class quality, intention, and skill level. So I would say put it to work, whatever it is that you have, because an idle resource can't multiply. You have to develop a plan, educate yourself, and then the opportunity will present itself. Lastly, expect growth through consistency. So again, if we're applying these just to our financial lives, identify what that thing is, get to work building it, developing it, honing that skill set. And then third, consistently do it. Practice makes perfect. I remember they used to tell me that as a kid, and I was like, I don't know what you guys talking about. Practice sucks. But as you develop some maturity, you understand that that time under tension made you better. You got better at writing, speaking, walking, even eating by doing it consistently, right? Time under tension is important. So that is where the multiplication gets in, right? You can't invest one time and then retire wealthy later on. You have to consistently do it, whether it's in a 401k and you're using matching funds of your employer, whether it's going on and buying real estate, whether it's going on and buying precious metals, commodities, trading, whatever it is, it's a consistency that you have to develop in doing it. And then you hit a bell curve over time where then you have exponential growth because you've been doing it for so long. So I just want to share those 3 points with you. Um, Three outcomes as we look at that scenario. There was only one minor. And like I said, there was three separate outcomes, and I think only two mindsets. One mindset was, I have this thing, I'm charged with it. Let me manage it to the best of my ability and see how much I can grow it. In one iteration, it grew tenfold. In another iteration, it grew fivefold. And I think anything that we do personally, if we get any of those two outcomes, we would jump for joy and be happy about it, right? But then there's the one scenario, the one outcome that was completely different to the other two. And I think it was really because of mindset. And he sort of said it, right? It was a fear mindset. He was afraid of his master who gave him that thing. And based on being afraid, he did nothing. He just wrapped it up, kept it safe. And it's funny how even just doing the baseline, keeping it intact, was not a reward. It actually led to a punishment. The only thing that was rewarded was the multiplication. So I think that that's a unique parable that Jesus told about our management, the expectation on our lives to first identify what it is that we have, two, put it to work in a meaningful way, three, multiply it and create growth from it for the benefit of others. And when we have something and we're so afraid to lose it, we recognize that it constricts us from a lot of opportunities, a lot of possibilities that we could have had. So I just think that was it's very profound um, that just the security aspect of keeping it was actually penalized and wasn't rewarded. We think sometimes, well, I saved it, that wasn't highlighted. So I think it's a unique perspective for all of us to challenge ourselves with the things that we are holding on to, that we're trying to secure, we're trying to protect, we're afraid of losing. Those are the very things that we need to take a risk to gamble on. And in another iteration, Jesus did say, anyone who wants to save his life must first kind of give it away. And I think of that as I think of this parable. The one person who kind of held on to it is the one person who lost it because it was taken away from him and given to someone else. With that, we talked about these things in review. I hope this resonated with you. I hope it was a meaningful dialogue and went way beyond just budgeting and managing money. Even though finance is at the core of this story, I think we can all see that there is so much more to our lives as faithful stewards, as steward leaders, than just security and staying within our comfort zone and our fear. So let me throw this on you. I'm gonna ask you this question. I want you to engage with me in the chat. What has God already entrusted to you that you're currently keeping safe? You're keeping it close to the vest instead of putting it to work. I know even in this work, it took me a long time to get this going for a couple reasons. Fear of rejection, right? What if I put it out there and no one likes it, no one follows, no one watches? And fear of what they call it, imposter syndrome, feeling like you don't know this, that someone knows it better than you. Those are some of the things that I've encountered even in doing this work. So I understand that, and I'm not making light of the one servant who was afraid, and it held them into kind of being paralyzed, because I felt that before. I felt fear of flying before. I remember when I was finishing up my college degree and I was being recruited by Bose to be a designer, and none of my friends liked the director who was leading the design department. I had an interview with him. He loved me. He was recruiting me, and I was like, "Whoa, I don't want to go work for this guy because if I piss him off, it won't work, and it'll be career suicide." And I talked myself out of it, and I never completed the application process because I was afraid of moving forward and leveraging my abilities and talents. He had saw my work. It wasn't like it was just a gamble. He looked at my portfolio. He saw some of the projects that I'd done, and he thought I had the skill set to work for Bose, which is still a company that I love their products to today. So it's just interesting how fear can cripple you and blind you in certain situations. But I want to be encouraging to all of you. If you have it, if the God you serve put it inside of you, I want to challenge you to take stock of what it is, put it to work, and then be faithful with it and multiply it into whatever it could grow into. It might grow into 5 cities, it might grow into 10 cities, but make sure it's not the same seed that was put inside of you that never germinated, never sprouted into something beautiful. And with that, I don't think the expectation is perfection for any of us. I think that is a construct that we put on ourselves, and we stop ourselves from engaging in this work that we need to know, that we know we need to do in our own lives, whether it's managing our money, with it, whether it's developing our skills, whether it's bringing that brainchild to life and manifesting it. I think we hold ourselves to perfection, but participation and again this continual effort, I think, is all God is requiring of us, and the perfection construct is just false evidence appearing real, right? That's um, um, an acrostic for fear that we all could learn. So it's just very interesting how when you have something, the more valuable it is, the more fear you have around engaging it for fear of loss. All right. So to wrap us up here, stewardship isn't simply just preserving the blessing, like I just said. It's really focusing on multiplying it for His glory and making sure, and for the good of the people around you, right? With that said, we're about 35 after the hour. I always try to keep this to about 30 minutes. Jump in the chat, type multiply if this resonates with you. We can help you out with some of the financial tools you may want to engage and employ in your own stewardship life, whether it's building out your spending plan if you've never done that. Did a couple videos on that. You could always find them on YouTube. Go out and watch them. I have lessons on it in the community. Last month, we did a webinar, and actually we've reposted some of those on YouTube about how to build out your spending plan, the exact percentages you need and you should apply to various parts of your life, and then how to modify and tweak those to your unique situation. Weekly money guides, we're going to talk about that in the upcoming webinar. So if you are following us on any of social media platforms, I please follow us on the various social media platforms. We put out a lot of content, but we'll be doing some marketing for next month's webinar. We're going to get into, I always say, if it's the one lesson I had to teach before God called me home on teaching people how to manage their money, it's the operating account. It's the one that changed my life and changed my relationship and how we managed our money. It's the core account in your household that you need in place. You automate it, you get it set up. I won't say set it and forget it, that old cliche. You want to set it up, you want to manage it, but it helps a lot when you don't have to get into decision fatigue. Certain things are just automated happening. Why not leverage all this technology we have at our hands? We talk about AI and all these things, and if we're not using them to engage and enrich our lives, then shame on us in the 21st century. So all kind of resources out there. Comment, multiply. We'll get it sent out to you. And with that, there's also the link to the community. I recommend, if you're interested in getting any of this content, do it now. I talked about this, I think, last week. The entire structure of the community is going to change. The pricing, everything's going to be completely different. If you want in, now is the time to get in as a foundational member, because we're giving the content away for free. But we recognize that sometimes people don't value things because they're getting them for free. So that's changing. So if you want to get in there, if you think that this can help you, jump in the community, start accessing that content. We're putting a ton more content out. We're going to build this all the way from foundational. There'll be different tiers because I recognize there's, if you look at my last YouTube series, I'm going to actually do this in the phases of life that I went through, right? The early six figures, 100 to 150,000. There are some things that you need to have in place foundationally. But then as you get to 200, $250,000 a year, whether that's one person or your household income, things change a lot. You need to have some other things in order. And then when you get to 250 up to 500, a lot of different things changes. You have a lot of opportunities. And if you aren't managing it, you're probably wearing it, driving it, or living in it. And none of those are real assets. I want to help you get a system in place, build your wealth, build your assets, change your children's lives, and become an awesome steward of the resources that God has entrusted you. So if that resonates with you, jump in now. This is as discounted as it ever will be. Major changes coming. So with that said, I'll jump to the outro. See you all. Have a great Wednesday evening. Thanks for joining us at the MOB Academy. Now stop scrolling and go mind your business.